Okay, so get ready to put your math skills to work to solve this interesting little math word problem. Matter of fact, let me go ahead and read the problem. It is the following. You cut a 16-foot and 10 inches long wood beam into four equal parts. Now, using a tape measure, how long is each part? Okay, so that is the problem. Feel free to use a calculator, but this part of the problem using a tape measure could be confusing to some of you out there that do not know how to read a tape measure or a ruler. But this is a very integral part of this problem because you might have some decimals here, but you don't really read tape measures per se with decimals. You can, but again, I want you to think about how you would measure out these pieces using a tape measure. All right, but again, if you don't know how to use a tape measure, I'll cover the basics of this in the video. But anyways, for those of you that have a strong background in construction or the trades, this should be quite easy for you. But all of you out there should try this problem and go ahead and put your answers into the comment section. I'll share the correct answer in just 1 second. Then, of course, I'm going to solve this problem step by step. But before we get started, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is John, and I have been teaching middle and high school math for decades. And it really is my true passion to try to make learning math as easy as possible. So if you need assistance in mathematics, check out my math help program at tcmathacademy.com. You can find a link to that in the description below. And if this video helps you out, or if you just enjoy this content, make sure to like and subscribe, as that definitely helps me out. Okay, so how long are these equal parts? Of course, we're going to have four of them, but each part is going to be how long using a tape measure. Well, we can express this in two different ways. So 50 1/2 inches would be correct, or maybe 4 feet and 2 inches, 2.5 inches, 4 feet, 2 1/2 inches. Okay, so this is basically two ways you could think of reading a tape measure. Okay, now of course there's some decimals involved in here, but if you're going to give a tape a measurement on a tape measure, and of course we're talking about the standard system where we're talking about feet and inches, not the metric system. These would be the most typical ways to express the length of these parts. Okay, so if you got this right, well, let's go ahead and celebrate by giving you a nice little happy face and a plus a 100% and multiple stars so you can brag to your friends and family that indeed you are a professional in division, because this is what this problem is about, and really units of measure and how to read a ruler or a tape measure. You'll be surprised. A lot of people just don't know how to read a tape measure. Now, if you don't know, please don't feel bad. This is a practical skill, and if you don't do any kind of work around the house, or if you never took shop in class or whatnot, but yeah, I'm sure you've all studied the basics of this. We probably forgot, but no big deal. I'll cover the basics of a tape measure in this problem. But let's go ahead and get into the solution. So first things first. First, we have a math word problem here. So always use the rule of three. Read the problem at least 3 times so you really understand what's going on. But to really kind of visualize the solution, you want to model, okay, what's going on. Now, of course, I said the word visualize because when we're thinking about a solution, you're kind of thinking in your head, like, how can I do this problem? You're trying to visualize the path to take, right? But you don't want to do all that visualization in your head. So come up with some sort of model that you can look at. And this is where math becomes very creative. And here, I think it's pretty straightforward. The best way to kind of visualize what's going on here is just to kind of sketch out a wood beam. And of course, we're going to have to think about the units of measure. So let's go ahead and take a look at my model. And effectively what we have here is this. So we have this wood beam. Now, of course, we want to just assume, and you never want to overcomplicate a problem and say, well, is this wood beam perfectly straight? Is it twisted? Never kind of, always take the simplest version of a problem, especially a math problem. But anyways, we have a perfectly levelly straight wood beam here. It's 16 foot and 10 inches long, right? So we have feet and inches, and we're going to chop this thing up in four equal parts. So the question is basically, how long is one of these pieces, right? Now, of course, the measurement of this piece is the same as this piece, as the same as this piece, as is it the same as this last piece because they are equal. But we want to read or we want to measure this using a tape measure. All right. So this is the kind of part of the problem that could confuse some people. So let's go ahead and talk real quickly about a tape measure. Now, again, I'm talking about a tape measure with standard units. Now, on I guess most tape measures, somebody out there can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe also too you do have the metric system on like one side, like a ruler. You'll have both the metric system and standard system. But on a lot of tape measures, you'll only just kind of have inches and feet. All right, so if I'm sure there's all different sorts of type of tape measures, but I'm just going to be focusing on feet and inches. Okay, so here is our lovely tape measure, and of course this thing kind of spools around the center, and we can pull this thing out to measure all different sorts of lengths. So there's basically two lengths or two parts of the tape measure that you want to pay attention to, and that is the feet and inches, right? So we have 1 foot, 2 feet, etc. And of course, this tape measure can go out all depending on what type of tape measure you have. Maybe it's like a 25-foot tape measure or a 50-foot. They get pretty long. But what we want to do here is realize that 1 foot, okay, is equal to 12 inches. So these are pretty common conversions and units of measure that most people should be familiar with. But if you didn't know, in 1 foot, okay, so between 1 foot and 2 feet on the tape measure are 12 inches. Okay, so that is the basics of that part of the tape measure. But let's get into the next part of the tape measure, and that's how we read in between these inches. Okay, so we have feet. That's pretty easy because you'll see these things 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot. But what about the inches part? Well, let's go ahead and talk about that right now. Okay, so this is just super basic kind of stuff, and hopefully most of you out there have experience reading a ruler or a tape measure. But let's suppose you're looking at our tape measure, and here we're looking at the inches. Okay, so this would be like 3 inches and 4 inches. Now, not feet. Okay, we're talking about inches right now. So between 3 inches and 4 inches, you'll see a big mark right here. And it's kind of the halfway point. Okay, so this point right here would be what? Well, if you had something that was this long, let me kind of just draw something out. Let's say you had something and you were measuring it and it went to this point right here. Well, how would we express this measurement? Okay, well, it passes 3 inches, it's not at 4 inches, and it's at that halfway mark. So this point right here would be 3.5 inches. 3.5 inches. We don't typically use decimals like 3.5 inches. Now it's okay to express that because on a tape measure with inches, we have, let's go and take a look at the other parts of it. And we want to kind of use the fractions that are involved here. So you're going to have, and this is pretty common for those of you, of course, that are experienced with construction and whatnot. You do this all the time. But this point right here would be 3.5 inches. Now let's suppose our little thingamajiggy, or whatever the case is, goes out to this point right here. I don't know if you could see that, but this point would be what? Well, here, this is our half-inch mark. Now we're going to split this half again into quarters. So you'll see these little kind of hashtags here. So this is 1/4, this is 2/4, and 2/4 is the same thing as 1/2. This is 3/4, okay, of an inch. And then of course this is 4/4, which is one entire inch. So that here is the fourths measurement. So 1/4, 2/4, which of course is 1/2, and 3/4 and 4/4. All right, so again, when it comes to reading a tape measure with inches, you're going to want to be thinking in terms of fractions. All right, so here again is our fourths, but we can split this again. And some of you might be saying, wow, my goodness, we got to do all this fraction work. Well, yes, indeed, you do. So let's suppose our little thing that we're measuring goes out to this point right here. So right here is a fourth. This is 1/4. Let me kind of actually write this a little bit clearer. And hopefully most of you out there are with me. Okay, so this is 1/2 right here. Let me erase this just so no one's confused. Okay, so this is 1/2, and then this right here is 1/4. Now we're splitting the 1/4 in half again. Okay, so we're going to take that 1/4 and divide it by 2. So this is going to be what? This is going to be 1/8. Okay, so this measurement right here would be 3 1/8 inches. 3 1/8 inches. And then we can even split that eighth again into 16ths. Okay, now you could have this right here. This would be 1/16, 2/16. So 2/16, if we reduce that fraction, that is 1/8 of an inch. But then we can have the next eighth or the next 16th. So not 2/16, we can have 3/16. And these are all pretty common standard measurements, like 3/16, 7/8. These are the type of things, this is the way we measure on a tape measure, okay, especially if you are in any sort of construction or trade. If you go and you're like measure something at your house and you go to your local Home Depot or Lowe's, you're like, hey, I need to pick this thing up. They're going to want to see your measurements in terms of fractions, not in decimals. Okay, so I guess that's the big point I'm trying to make here. You need to be able to interpret the measurements with fractions, okay, not decimals. So you wouldn't say, oh, my thing right here is 3.75 inches. Of course, we can understand that 0.75 inches is 3/4 of an inch, but when it gets into like 1/8 or 3/16, you want to use the fractions that are on the measurement. Okay, so hopefully this kind of is a quick review for some of you out there, and some of you that have a lot more experience than I do. Maybe you're like a machinist or something. You have, or someone in construction. You do this all the time. You can do this stuff in your head. You're so good at it. But anyways, hopefully this is helpful. But this is what we want to do. We want to be thinking in terms of the tape measure. Okay, now let's go back and understand the situation. So here is our wood beam. It's 16 foot and 10 inches. So if I want to know, and we're going to split this in 4 equal parts, if I want to know the distance of one part, well, what do I need to do? Well, I need to take this length and divide it by 4. Okay, but I have a situation here. I'm dealing with feet and inches. So I have 2 different units of measure. So what do we do with that? Well, what we want to do, and there's different approaches to this, all depending upon your experience, by the way, because a lot of you have a lot of experience, using tape measures, and you probably do it for a living. You may do this even in your head. But what I want to suggest is that we want to have one common unit of measure. So we have feet and we have inches. So always use the smaller units here. So let's just go with inches. Okay, so let's just convert everything into inches, and then we'll kind of take the problem from there. All right, so what does that mean? Well, we're going to have to figure out what 16 feet and 10 inches is all equal to in terms of inches. So how do I convert 16 feet into inches? Easy. All I have to do is multiply 16 by 12. Okay, because remember, in 1 foot, there are 12 inches. So 16 feet, we'll have 16 times 12 inches. So 16 feet is 192 inches. Now I already have these 10 inches right here, right? 16 feet and 10 inches. So collectively, my total here is 192 plus 10, which of course is 202 inches. Okay, so that's what I have, and now we're going to take the next step in this problem, which of course is having you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Now, I wouldn't interrupt our lovely little problem here if I did not need your support. I need your support. So the best way for you to support this channel is by just hitting that subscribe button and hitting that notification button. I've been on YouTube for like 10 plus years. I have well over 2,000 plus math videos, from basic math to advanced math, and I have millions and millions of views and hundreds of thousands of subscribers. All that is great and fantastic, but that's not like, I'm not trying to reach some point, some sort of plateau and be like, okay, I did enough on YouTube, I'm done. No, there is an infinite amount of stuff to teach, because there's an infinite amount of people that need help in mathematics. It's just one of those topics that a lot of people don't understand well enough. And a lot of people get frustrated learning math. They're just like, I don't understand. I'm bad at math. Well, that's often the case because you're just not getting complete comprehensive instruction that you understand. That's the first reason. And the second reason, I think a lot of people just try to take too many shortcuts. Okay. And I think, if you've done anything, if you really accomplished a big goal in your life, right, that it takes a lot of work. There was no shortcuts to achieve that objective. Math is the same thing. There's a huge amount to learn in math. And what I'm trying to do is tell people how it is, but really encourage them and support them through my instruction. So I need your help to grow my channel. So hit that subscribe button and again, that notification bell so you can get my latest videos. And let's get back to this problem. Okay, so 16 feet and 10 inches we determine is 202 inches. Okay, so if we want to know if we're going to split this beam in four equal parts, and this beam is 202 inches, we simply are just going to take that 202 and divide it by 4. Now remember in the beginning of this video I said feel free to use a calculator, no big deal here. So 202 divided by 4 is 50.5 inches. Now, I would say 99% of people could interpret what 50.5 inches is on a tape measure. Okay, you'll be like, oh, yeah, that's going to be a half inch. But I don't want to make that assumption, and I want to go ahead and talk to those people that might still be confused on, okay, well, again, how do I read this on a tape measure? All right, so we have 50.5 inches. There's a couple different ways we could do this. All right, so we have 50 and a zero point 0.5 of an inch. All right, so 50 inches here and 0.5 of an inch. Now, if you remember on our tape measure deals with fractions, okay, not decimals. So let's interpret what 0.5 of an inch is. Okay, well, 0.5 is this decimal here. We read this as 5 tenths. 0.5 is 5 tenths, and of course 5 tenths is a fraction that we can reduce to 1/2. So 0.5 of an inch is the same thing as 1/2 inch. And of course, we remember how to read that on our lovely little mark there. So that's where that location is going to be. That's 1/2 of an inch. So 50.5 inches is the same thing as 50 and 1/2 inches. All right, so what do we do? Well, how do we kind of measure this out? So we're going to get our lovely tape measure. And on our tape measure, you have both feet and you have the inches. So if you want to measure out the pieces in this way, you're going to focus on inches and you're going to be looking for 50, right? So you're going to be scanning along, pulling out the tape measure and be like, okay, here's 50 and here's 51. So where's 50 and 1/2 inches? Well, here's 50 inches. So 1/2 of an inch is right here, okay? So we would kind of measure this thing out at this point like so, and that would be the appropriate location. All right, so that's one way you could measure this just by, using inches or describe the measurements. That's perfectly fine, 50 inches and 50 and 1/2 inches. Okay, so that is that. Again, the tape measure or a ruler is dealing with fractions, not decimals. And this is obviously very easy because 1/2 is the same thing as 0.5. But there's another way we kind of think of this answer, right? So 50.5 inches. We could kind of break this down in this manner. So we have 50 inches. Okay, when we have 50 and 1/2 inches, but 50 inches in here, we have some feet. Okay, so how many feet are in 50 inches? Well, a lot of you out there know that we're talking about multiples of 12, right? So 12 times 4 gives us 48. So 48 inches is the same thing as 4 feet. So we could just think of this 50 inches as 48 plus 2 inches, which of course is 50 inches. But the 48 inches is 4 feet. And then we're left with 2 and 1/2 inches. So you could give this measurement as 4 feet and 2 and 1/2 inches. But the main idea here, okay, is tape measures and just rulers. You use fractions and not decimals. Now, of course, you can convert a decimal into a fraction, but I think it's a problem like this. Hopefully, gives some practical value for those of you that forgot how to read a tape measure, because you just never know. You're doing some sort of project around the house. Maybe you want some new curtains, or you're measuring around your door for whatever molding. It doesn't make a difference. Mathematics is the whole purpose of math is to solve practical problems, and using a tape measure is a practical skill. And I think too that this gives a real, hopefully, gives some sort of appreciation to those of you that don't realize how strong a lot of people in the trades are in math. I'm talking about. I've talked to so many people. I mean, I'm a pretty handy person. I've done a lot of handy work. Construction, those type of things. But really, some of the professionals in the trades, whether the machinist or in construction or any type of thing that you have to deal with measuring. Okay, and this is a big deal, and it can get really complex, by the way, too. Especially like if you're a machinist, these type of things, or people that are using computer software to come up and mill and I mean if you're not familiar with some of the production processes, you really have to be good in math and you must know how to measure. So anyways, again, hopefully this problem was interesting. And by the way too, just one quick thing, if you are kind of like thinking to yourself, boy, I don't even really understand basic math, maybe this video kind of inspired you to kind of want to relearn about fractions and decimals. If you want to kind of review some basic mathematics, well, let me go ahead and suggest my Math Foundations course. All right, I never want to kind of leave someone hanging out there that wants to kind of improve their math skills beyond this video, because this video we're just covering a problem. So if you do want to get inspired and learn mathematics or relearn math or learn math for the first time, I have two courses here. Matter of fact, let me just stop here and tell you. The first is my Math Foundations course. I just cover basic math, decimals, fractions, all that kind of stuff that most people forgot way back in elementary or primary school. But a better course is my Math Skills Rebuilder course. I cover everything in that Foundations course in that course, but in this course I cover a ton of algebra, geometry, trigonometry, basic probability, and statistics. You'll get a very strong math education. But anyways, hopefully this video was interesting. If that was the case, don't forget to like and subscribe. And with that being said, I definitely wish you all the best in your mathematics adventures. Thank you for your time and have a great day.